Can you tell us a bit more about you, Heather, as a social business leader and what you are currently doing?
I've spent the last 12 years helping organisations measure their impact, working with charities and social enterprises. About 8 years ago, that took me down the path of helping them implement CRM databases in order to hold that data and to really manage it, analyse it better. So currently we're working a lot with organisations to help them become GDPR compliant, making sure they're capturing data in the right way, making sure that it's they've got the adequate consent and that they're able to still store and analyse it properly.
Right. So GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
comes into force throughout Europe on May 25th, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us in a limpid way, what is GDPR in practice and in a nutshell, and who does it apply to?
Okay, so data protection has always, been around. It's always been something that, as an organisation, if you collect personal information, that you have a responsibility to look after that and protect it properly.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's nothing new to some organisations, but there are new regulations and management practices that have come into force with the new GDPR guidelines coming in May. So within this video, we're not going to cover everything that will stipulate in some ways. What it does encourage, though, is best practice around looking after personal information. So there's typical things around, people have a right to understand what data you hold about them.
Uh-huh.
They have a right to understand how you're going to protect and manage the data that you hold about them. They have to provide consent for you to hold that information. And there's also different consents around, marketing. So, you can't be spamming people. It's about making sure that people can opt in rather than opt out to communications, and a whole range of things like that you need to think about. They've also stepped up how you document how you manage data. So there's always been the responsibility to have a data protection policy,
Mm-hmm.
but there's some more guidance around that as well, around how you sort of document and manage and audit how you, as an organisation, hold that data and responsibility for, data being held about individuals across the EU and Europe. And if you're dealing with any data within that, it still will apply to UK residents.
Mm-hmm. There is something around companies that are outside Europe, and when they send you something, you have the right to say something about it, don't you?
So you have to be conscious. I think every organisation will be different. So what I can't give is specific advice to those organisations. But for example, we work with Salesforce, and now they're a US-based company. People say, well, does that mean our data is held in the US? Mm-hmm. So if we look at Salesforce as an example, they do certainly have a data storage, warehouse in the US, but also they have UK and EU instances where you can request that your data is held. Yeah. There's also something called a UK-US or an EU-US data shield, which also protects data across the areas. What the GDPR guidelines stipulates is that you need to be aware as an organisation the different data processes that you're using. And by data processes, we're talking about CRM, we're talking about GoToWebinar, Eventbrite, all of these different tools that basically will store your data somewhere, and you need to have an agreement or be aware of where they are holding your data. Because as the organisation, you are the data controller. Mm. So you need to have responsibility over your client data and understand where it's being held and whether that is okay or not in regards to sort of the type of data that you hold as an organisation.
Excellent. So Heather, let's go into the practicals and maybe try to summarize that in the case of a sole trader or a micro social enterprise, for instance, because that's our sector.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example how these people would have behaved until now, and what kind of problem they could face after May when the law comes into force if they don't change their practice. Just a couple of tiny examples, practical examples.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think within the sector, you're getting a bit of a, scaremongering, or what's this going to mean, and are people really going to audit what you're doing? And people can very much think about it as there's a stick prodding me to do something about this. I think with data protection, there's always been a responsibility of the business owner or, the organisational leader to take a responsibility around the data they hold to make sure that it is secure. So actually what GDPR guidance is actually helping you understand best practice as an organisation, helping people just really evaluate, well, actually, what information do we hold? Do we collect more data than we actually need to? Exactly. Have we got a right and responsibility to collect this data? So I really, within our 10-step guide, we really talk about, well, what is the benefits of actually looking at this guidance and thinking about how it applies. So one, collect the right information and have a reason for collecting it, and justifiably so. And if you do hold it, make sure that you treat sensitive data with the right level of security, particularly if it's financial information or, if you're dealing with vulnerable people, that you're maintaining that data, and only people have access to it that need to have access to it, and it is securely locked away. The other thing is to think about, well, how, if we're collecting information, how do we use that data in terms of intelligence? How can we better support our clients, or, offer them services that might be suitable to them? So we talk about a 360-degree view of information about a customer. And if you have that level of data, how do you, as I say, use it sensibly, not to take advantage of it, but understand it? Now, customers have a right to access the information you hold about them. So if you start to collate this 360-degree view of your customer and know all your interactions and all the data you hold, then you can easily give it to somebody if they request it. So they go hand in hand of meeting those two requirements. The others is around customer communication. So you want to be able to, as an organisation and as a team, understand what information you should be logging about a customer. So whether that's a phone call, an email, and being able to track all of that, and that they've given you consent, whether that's verbally or written. So I was having a conversation yesterday with a client about, well, okay, if you're going to get phone consent, that's fine, but are you going to record those phone calls so you've got that consent verbally? So thinking through best practice in that way. And then the other is data security. So have you got a tool or a system where your data is secure and it's password protected, that you change those passwords, that you make sure that the system you have has adequate security and backup available? So it's just thinking through all these areas, and these are the steps that we've been helping people think through practically.
Oh, this is great. I can see some people like almost fainting that, am I going to do this? I'm only using Excel sheet. So I know you have several tools to help. You mentioned one of them. You mentioned the CRM, the Customer Relationship Management Platform. And are there other key actions people need to go through to make it easier for themselves before they opt for one platform or another? So other things that they need to think about.
Yeah, so it's definitely not about a system, but, a system is the centralised point. So we've got a series of 10-step actions that we kind of are talking people through. I think at the core of that is about centralising your data. And people might have a range of systems. So one of the things you can do is do an information audit, where you kind of go, well, actually, how do we collect information? What tools are we using? And how do we then centralise that data into one place? So, you might do events through Eventbrite or go to webinar and you're collecting data there, but then where do you then hold that and store it centrally, so you start to get an understanding around that 360-degree view of a customer.
Outside of a third-party platform such as Eventbrite or things like that.
Yes, exactly. So it's that CRM tool that then can start to bring that together. So one of your actions is to think about, where are we holding data currently? The other set of actions we sort of walk people through is, what data do you want to hold on people? So to refresh, what are our compulsory fields, our compulsory data that we need to hold? What is our core data we need to hold? And just to rethink, are we collecting other things that are not, for any benefit or purpose? Then need to think about how you collect that data. What is the way of getting consent from people? One, to hold their data, but two, to, ask them to consent into any marketing material that you might want to send them. You then need to think through, once you've collected that data, does it need to be held, does it need to be encrypted, if it's sensitive, or does it need to be locked down from different people? So it's thinking through who has access to your data and how, and locking that down. And then it's thinking around monitoring that compliance. So how do you monitor that you are being compliant ongoing? And one of the responsibilities that ideally somebody within your organisation needs to take is to have a data manager who has the overarching responsibility to check, well, actually, we've thought about all this and we're doing it all, but are we maintaining compliance with it? So that's where you need to appoint somebody for this responsibility as a data manager. And then looking at it from a marketing point of view, we talk through people, well, what are people consenting into? What is the marketing that you want to do to people? How do we get their consent? And then how do you integrate and manage that e-marketing going forward? So we're also talking to people about e-marketing solutions and how they can integrate with a CRM. And that you maintain, that consistency around consent and opt-out going forward. But, that sort of, has double-edged sword. So a lot of marketing teams are actually really looking forward to this, because maybe they've had like a 60% uptake on their newsletter, and they're like, well, it's just because people don't want to actually receive it. So by now going out with an opt-in, we're going to get all those people who've opted in who want to read it, and now we might get 100% readership rate of our newsletter. So I'm actually getting really excited about actually the positive change this could bring, is that rather than lots of people being tagged to the newsletter who are no longer interested, it will actually increase their engagement rates.
Mm-hmm. This is fascinating. I was listening to you, and you're saying you might want to appoint someone as a data manager, and I'm thinking of all the social entrepreneurs in our networks who might be, the accountant, the leader, the CEO, the dishwasher. They do all of this, so they might as well take the role of data manager, as it were. What do you suggest they do? And I know you have a resource at Economic Change. What do you do? What do you suggest they do?
Yeah, so one, I think, have a look internally, see whether you've got the right option. As you say, normally somebody else has to take it on as other responsibilities. One of the things that we've been doing with our charities is we're training mums up as Salesforce administrators. And they are now being placed within roles within charities and companies to act as the data manager internally. So, think about flexible resource. Like, it doesn't need to be a full-time job. I mean, it's a shout out to the mums out there, but sometimes actually the mums we've placed have got legal backgrounds, financial backgrounds, professional careers, where actually they're just wanting, a few hours work a week where they could be your data manager. So do think about, mums as flexible workforces. Don't sort of think that a data manager has to be a full-time role. It can be something actually where you can get some support, for a few hours a week, just to keep the audit there, really.
Yeah, just to set you up and to maintain. Yes, as you mentioned earlier, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you use, well, you mentioned a couple of times you use Salesforce, so that's your CRM and your tool to manage all this, but how can social enterprise with a limited budget get started with such a tool?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, there are quite a few open source software, free CRM tools out there. I think one of the things that you need to be careful of is just to check the security and backups of those types of products. I can't vet, I don't know about those. But in terms of the reason we use Salesforce is because it is one of the globally recognised CRM tools. But it offers free and heavily discounted licenses for non-profit. So a lot of them do access it for free. They there's a learning platform called Trailhead where you can learn about Salesforce and customize it yourself. We tend to go in as a consultancy to help them set up and configure the system initially, quite often, to sort of really make sure it's capturing the right data in the right way and giving them the right data and analysis. So I just feel confident with that because it's got all the security and trust and parameters, and actually they've been one of the front leaders, really, particularly around GDPR, around security. So, it's not saying it's the only solution, but it's certainly one that's worth looking at, alongside other ones in the marketplace.
To keep your house tidy and everything well organized and centralized, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. That's what we like to do.
Thank you very much for your key lightning points here. And what do we need to do to get more information or advice from you?
Okay, well, I'll provide I've got 3 top links here that we can provide at the end of the video for you to access more information.
Yeah.
One is a link to our website where we've got a free download for our GDPR guide. So that's our 10 steps you can take, and really focus it on practical steps, because I kind of got a bit fed up with reading around, well, this is what it's about. It's like, well, actually, how do we do this?
Yes, how do we get on with it? Exactly.
So we've got that guide. I've also provided a link to the ICO website that provides all the guidance and regulation around GDPR.
So ICO, can you remind us what ICO stand for those who are not yet knowledgeable about that?
It's the Information Commissioner, so they look after sort of the guidance around it. And there's a lot. They're doing a lot. There's also a free helpline available, so you don't need to pay for experts around GDPR for some of those things. You might need somebody to come in and actually look and appraise your situation, but the reality is that you can ring them to ask them questions, and quite a few people are tackling it themselves internally. And then the other link that I provided is to salesforce.org, so you can check that out as a possible tool, and then apply for the temporary licenses if you think that's something that's going to work for you.
Fantastic. Well, Heather, thank you very much, and we'll put the links in the video after the video, so that everybody can connect with you and get all your lovely resources for GDPR. Fantastic. Thank you very much.